Sometimes it's hard to remember everything about yourself. You put bits and pieces together. You see glimpses. Some you want to rewind. Some fast forward. And some you want to forget. I was once a bodybuilder. I competed at the highest level, on the top stages in the world. Bodybuilding was more than a profession. It was my calling. It was my life. For years and decades, I competed with the expectation of being able to do very well. However, there are things that are outside of your control.
What's up, bodybuilding sports fans? It is 2015, and I am of the realization that I am not going to be allowed to compete. You don't get to this point and just stop. It doesn't happen like that.
This is not a movie. This is not a movie. This is my life. Bodybuilding helped me recognize my power and recognize that you create anything you wanted, even the impossible. Because as sure as I was able to look in the mirror and see myself at 297 pounds, there was a time that wasn't the reality. In fact, what it would take to go from where I started, you would literally have to teach yourself how to do the impossible. Because it's always impossible until you do it.
Green documentary. Take one. Marker.
Who are you? I mean, how would you describe yourself?
My name is Kai Green. I am a professional athlete, entrepreneur,
Painter, influencer, aspiring actor, and now comic book artist. Chronicles of King Kai is a story that I've been writing in my head since I was a kid. It's more than just a fantasy. It represents the story of my life. And I'm finally ready to share this with the world.
But you're most known as a bodybuilder, correct?
Kai is a huge name in bodybuilding. He's the people's champ. People still talk about him. You know, he still has a big following.
When Kai burst onto the scene, he was a different kind of bodybuilder. Most other bodybuilders were showing off fancy cars and fancy homes. Kai had none of that.
When I saw Kai, I did see a hunger that he really wanted to be something more than where he was.
He was just total tunnel vision of what he was set out to do.
And I think he started to realize, I got what it takes to really be one of the best bodybuilders in the world. And he was determined to be the best in the world.
So Kai, where were you born?
I was born Leslie Green in Brooklyn, New York. The city was a different place back then. Only the strong were meant to survive. I was raised without a father and lived the early years of my life with my biological mother and younger brother.
What is your earliest memory from your childhood?
I remember being a little boy standing there crying, and remember my little brother crying while I watched my biological parent fighting with a man that was going to be escorted out of the house in handcuffs. That image is still very real because there's other times in my life when I can see the little boy crying and then see myself escorted out of the house with my hands in handcuffs. My biological parent was very strong, very aggressive, very aggressive. And some people would say violent. Yeah, she would hit, and she didn't care. I remember once being a little boy in a police precinct, and I remember seeing a bunch of confusion.
I hear papers shuffling. I don't know where to look. Phones are ringing. It's still raining. So many voices. I hear metal on metal as handcuffs tighten. Someone's trying to talk to us. I remember talking to strange men. Of course, now I know these men were detectives. They wanted to see it for themselves. They needed to see what she'd done.
Little boy in the police precinct does have to go to court because biological parent was arrested. I would eventually become a state star witness against my biological mother in a child abuse and neglect case.
I wish I could look back on that little boy and say he was up for the challenge, ready to become the master of his own destiny. But he was a kid whose world was crumbling around him. He was scared. I didn't need sons, I needed warriors. That was the last thing my mother said to me.
My mother was very angry, very upset. You wouldn't know at that age that things are gonna happen and you're never gonna be able to go back. It's never gonna be right. But yeah, my brother and I became a ward of the state.
Just like the boy in the police precinct, everybody in life has to find their own direction. At some point, you kind of just have to identify for yourself, well, what happens to me? The hero begins to make his way and save his world.
So, how did you end up in the correctional facility?
I really didn't see myself as a tough guy. I wasn't one of those kids that was carrying guns and stuff. I was the kid that had roaches in my house. And I was the kid that didn't want people to know I had roaches in my house. And you wish that your vulnerability wasn't so clean and easy to see. But you can't hide, you can't run. And now, because it is what it is, you got people standing there wanting to tease you. You get into a lot of fights, but you are labeled a behavior problem in class. There was a task force that was in the school that was trying to do something about some of the gang activity. I carried a knife with me.
I had gotten into an altercation earlier that day with the teacher, and I was accused of assault. They asked me if I had a weapon, and they found a knife. I was going to be charged with assault and carrying a weapon. I can remember the image of a man being led out in handcuffs. That image is so real, so real. I've seen that image a few times, but in different ways. And the image of a man being led out in handcuffs was me. I didn't face charges for that. I just ended up going upstate. That was my introduction into institutional facility living. Yeah, I discovered that I was there and definitely not, that wasn't the place for me.
Were you scared?
Yes, which was revealing of the point that I wasn't as tough as I thought I was.
When getting into the institutional facility, one thing you did was you learned that you don't laugh in the beginning because sometimes that will present itself as weakness and you can't expose any vulnerability at all. You don't sing, you don't dance. I remember walking through the gym. There were a lot of people that were playing, but then there were these other areas where they weren't. It were just 6 guys. One guy took off his shirt, and I noticed he had a mark on him. It looked like a triangle with circles. That's a hurt. A hurt was somebody you did not want to be. Somebody that was weak, somebody that could not fight, and somebody that would not fight. That mark was a mark that was described as a iron. And these guys were held down, and they dropped that hot iron on them. But if you ain't able to fight, then that can happen to you. And no matter what happens, I will not walk out of here with a brand. Did they try you? Yeah. Did you win every fight? No. One thing you don't like to do is to put yourself in a position where you are alone because they will try you. One day you're doing a cleaning detail. When I first got there, you didn't even go to the bathroom. I once held my stool for 2 weeks for fear of being caught in the bathroom alone. The floors are painted green, and the walls are cold, white, tiled. And you put the cleaning agent on, you start scrubbing and singing, and then the scene just slowly changes. Your singing has distracted you. You didn't see it. Everything that happens next will help you understand how you learn the lessons, why you don't sing, and why you need to learn how to fight. Because to do that would reveal weakness, and if you appear weak, then they will try you. And though you are learning how to fight, and though you are becoming masterful at it, there will be those fights that you don't have the really, really awesome way of reporting. And the idea I struggled to come to consciousness and catch who I am, where I'm at. Who are they laughing at?
One of the very first things I noticed were the scars on his face. I didn't know what it meant.
He got into a fight and they gave him $150. $150 is when they take a razor blade and they go from, the front of your face to the back of your head. So $150 is 150 stitches.
That's why you need to learn how to fight. Because if you don't, this will happen more. As you walking around with a fucking sign on your back, like, yo, bring this shit my way. And that is not gonna be tolerated. So yeah, I'm gonna learn how to fight, man. I'm gonna fight. I'm gonna keep fighting. I'm gonna win. because I realize I'm fighting for a lot more than just... This is more than just bragging rights. I did push-ups any way that I could, and I got to a place where I literally tried to do 1,000 push-ups a night, every day. I would do push-ups until I felt like I couldn't move. And I didn't just do push-ups. I did whatever I could do. Whatever I thought. I'd do push-ups upside down if I could. I'd hang off the fucking ceiling if I could. I felt like my anger would consume me. Like there wasn't a place big enough on this planet to hold the rage that I had in my heart. And I wanted to kill everything and every living thing. And I'll do these push-ups and I'll start to imagine that I can do better. Sometimes I could just get down here and just start doing push-ups. Just do these fucking push-ups, because that's all I can do. That's all I can fucking do.
I had to grow up, and grow up fast. I had to leave the boy behind if I wanted to survive. That's when Leslie, the boy, was left behind. My name is Kai. I am Kai.
I was afraid, I was weak, and I needed to be a warrior. I needed to be stronger. One of the ways you were able to fight psychologically was to look imposing. That's how bodybuilding helped. It became the thing that revealed to me something very important about myself. I remember a teacher, he complimented the fact that he saw me as being very muscular. He gave me a book, the Arnold Schwarzenegger Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding. And at that time in my life, I could not read. And that book was a very intimidating book. To be able to hold it looked like embracing something that was literally the epitome to me of what was impossible.
It was more than a dream. It was a real vision, a vision that I manifested. My destiny was to become the best bodybuilder the world had ever seen.
Still believing that I could compete one day, I just started doing what I thought I needed to do, and that is anything. So I knew I was going to need a diet, and the food that they gave you in the institutional facility was always soaking in butter and oil and it's grease. I just thought, okay, what is the way to diet? I thought bread and water. I feel like I still grew like that. I ate bread and water. I had started trying to learn how to read. We kept working out. The institution did not fight me. They started to let up and allow me the ability to have my bread, have my water.
I recognized the opportunity that I had available to me, the work and effort that had to go into the letter writing and the campaign to get the right powers that be to allow me the privilege of leaving the facility.
I was actually allowed to go and compete. I felt like the world had just opened up to me.
And I'd stand there on stage with athletes, teenagers that had people at home vested in seeing them succeed. And then there was you. When they announced your name, people really didn't respond very much at all because there was nobody assembled there to come and see you. There's gonna be no mom, no dad. There's nobody gonna be sitting in the audience proud of you. But you were proud.
I prepared and I prepared and I prepared and I prepared. I saw it in my mind over and over and over again. I had now become those things that I dreamed about. I wanted to be in a place where I could focus and really believe and commit to this idea that I could create my own future and possibility of becoming something more than just this negative statistic or this person that can be locked away, and I can become whatever I said I want, even if that ability, felt like it was impossible. I could do that. I was so excited. I won. And this seemed like something that I could do. I could do this.
Being a bodybuilder, you are a performer. Your job is to reveal your physique artistically and leave people in awe. To me, acting is a natural progression of that. It's a craft I decided to take seriously.
Your next reaction might be play right back or fear or different emotions. So it just lets you immediately start making choices for yourself.
But breaking in and actually getting roles is a whole new challenge. It's gotta be that way. A casting agent might only see me as a muscle man who is trying to act. Being successful in bodybuilding and social media allowed me to open up a few doors in Hollywood.
1, 2, 3.
I was able to land a few roles so far. Stranger Things was my introduction to this industry. That led to getting an agent.
They basically guest starring roles, so you would be appearing in it I don't know how many times.
What are we looking at doing today?
Regarding the press, we have Huffington Post, according to Annie, and also ABC News that is interested in doing a feature with Kai.
And sure, I got a few people on my side, my manager, my business partners,
I think this is the
but things are not always what they seem.
Like, who would go on IMDb to find Kai?
Mostly producers and directors.
What is Rihanna's star meter?
Rihanna's star meter is 1,449.
Oh.
And Kai's at 61.
If you Google, like, let's say, do Selena Gomez for instance.
No, the lower it is, the better.
What?
Yeah, the lower the better.
The lower the better. So your score is better than Rihanna's right now.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I know that if I want to make acting into a career, I still have to break down some of those doors and find my place.
Who would go on?
After spending 6 years upstate, I was finally released in the big city, and just like that, I was all alone again. Leaving the institutional facility and finding a way to make do. I just ended up in some interesting places.
He had tough circumstances. I mean, there's stories where he was basically living in a gym, eating just cans of tuna to live on for many years.
He was homeless, man. Moving around our state with people. We lived in a building that was condemned. We didn't have electricity. I lived somewhere between the runaway shelter, getting a meal in the cafeteria, sleeping on the train, and riding everywhere in New York. The most frightening times in my experience is riding the train. I'd heard in the news about people that were setting people on fire on the train. The idea of being unconscious and waking up to look and see a match seconds before you go up in flames, it really became a nightmare. I started to understand that I am not safe here. I ended up trying to answer the question of where to go. What do I do for a living and how do I support myself? At 16, I was over 200 pounds. People would mistake me for being an adult. And it made it easier to kind of walk into like situations that you wouldn't expect for a 16-year-old. On St. Mark's in Astor Place, there was a runaway shelter. As a teenager, I remember being very frustrated and confused. I think I know everything, but I really don't. Turns out the counselor there introduces you to another guy. Technically, these people work as scouts. These guys are parasites. They're gonna show you like some things on the fringes of society. That became the introduction into like a lot of things, but technically the dancing. We walked in, what looked like a peep show. It was like, hey, you know, we got this guy, you know, he can dance, he's good. It's like, oh, he's good, he's with us. He said, can he move? He said, yeah, he can move. Well, if he can move, he'll make a lot of money here. That's what he said. He asked me, did I have a big cock? I wasn't prepared for that. I was gonna go on that night. The lights are low, and in front of me, there's a red exit door. And I remember standing on that stage, and it's now my turn. The reality here is that there's not a lot of women. These are men. You are now the performer in a show, but you don't know what to do.
I started stripping at 21 for the same reason he started stripping, money. But you know the consequences. So when a man decides he wants to strip, that is a calculated choice.
Most of the guys that were in shape in the gyms did it. It wasn't frowned upon.
They do it because they have to make ends meet to compete.
Listen, it's tough, man. Our sport's not cheap.
I remember seeing myself evolve into a headline dancer.
That's me. Wet Seduction the Slayer. That's my name. And male exotic entertainment, well, that's my game. They love me. The shame, pain, I let them go a long time ago. I don't need to make anyone proud of me.
I discovered that I was very easily seduced by the applause from the audience and the approval of the audience. I could thrive on it. You know, you work and you do that while you still continue to develop yourself as an athlete. You had to get the experience to learn how to compete successfully. You can only do that by just doing it. It's not uncommon to find that you can, you know, compete in hundreds of shows in 10 years, you know, in an effort to still figure things out. So I got a chance to start competing. I competed in a lot of different organizations.
The harder I worked, the more development I saw.
Back then, you had to get one.
Getting a pro card from the International Federation of Bodybuilding, aka the IFBB, was a top honor. This meant that you are now a professional athlete.
Many bodybuilders, they do chase their pro card, and some bodybuilders either give up. Into the 90s, into 2000, it became a lot more difficult because the competition was just much more intense. To learn about Kai having difficulties in getting his pro card and taking many years to get that pro card showed he had that champion mentality that he wasn't going to give up.
When I finally got my pro card, it felt euphoric. I felt like I'd accomplished something that I've manifested. But in reality, my journey was just beginning.
I wanted to compete and I wanted to win. I remember being willing to do more work than anybody else would be willing to do. Nothing was going to stop me from trying to do whatever it was that I thought I needed to do in order to win.
Before I could even think of winning the top title, I had to face some of the best pro bodybuilders that were also coming up at that time. All were hungry, all had great genetics, and all worked hard. But there was one guy. He got his pro card a year after me. Instantly, people took notice. The whole industry saw he was truly gifted and was destined to move up the ranks.
How you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm good. I hear you've been getting some interesting offers.
Remember I've mentioned that I have a Hollywood agent now. I've been pushing him to lock in film and TV roles in the U.S., but it's been slow. I'm, however, getting offers overseas.
You know, I don't know if you should be taking these roles overseas. I don't know if that's the right choice for you right now.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Just mull it over, think about it, and you know, we'll circle back to it, and I think...
I have a decision to make. Do I stay and keep waiting for offers, or go where people want to see me and give me more opportunities?
As always.
Hey, likewise. Thanks again.
All right.
Let's keep it working. All right.
Despite my agent's wishes, I went to India to shoot the movie called Pogaru. It was a much-needed experience to further my acting and to work with a crew.
No crap. No crap.
Acting is about finding your strength, like bodybuilding, sculpting a character.
Under backrated. Hello?
The following year, Pogaru would open in theaters in the #1 spot all over India. I've been playing and creating roles my entire life. Even the persona of Kai Green was built on the necessity of survival. It was the role of a warrior who continued to fight. I was still dancing. It didn't always go so well. I had just had a not so extraordinary performance. I didn't make a whole lot of tips that night. So at the end of the day, you came in a $50 deficit. Translation, I made no money that night. This was serious. We didn't dance, we don't eat. The gentleman comes up to me and he gives me a business card. He says, I'd like to book you to perform. I just want to pay it. And I'm thinking, meanwhile, inside, I'm already doing the happy dance. I'm praising God. I'm thinking, this is great. I perform the act, then I finish, and I bring her out. You know who she is. She's, well, the whole world got a chance to meet her. It was a grapefruit. I performed, I got paid, and that was like the beginning of doing a couple videos.
There was some controversy there about, some of the porn.
Listen, you saw him do something funny, simulate it, like a magician does something you thought you saw, but he never did anything XXX. I would define him as almost like Playboy rated, 1X. He needed money.
Did you think that these recordings would come back to hurt Kai later?
I didn't want to see it bother him, but I told him that was gonna happen. It didn't take much to understand that they're gonna mess with you.
You're really still like crawling through the weeds, trying to get yourself on the radar. I continued to work. I still danced. I trained like 6 hours a day. You really were just starting from scratch all over again. A small fish in a huge ocean.
My pro career hadn't exactly gotten off to a great start. I did a few competitions and placed dead last. Those were real learning experiences.
I think my breakout show was the Colorado Pro 2006. Rodney St. Cloud had approached me about doing a posing routine together on stage. There was a $10,000 prize up for the best posing routine because Rodney and I had been crossing paths in the dance game. He had said to me, we should definitely do a set.
Posing is critical. It is one of the most grueling things. When you present yourself on stage, you have to be able to show that you are having fun. And if you don't practice that, you look like you're straining the whole time. And looking at the way Kai would pose, you would know that he did hours and hours of practicing the posing routine.
Rodney had made the top 6 in that show. So after the prejudging, he was told, leave that monkey shit to Kai to do. It broke his heart. Pissed me off, man. So I told Kai, listen, you do the routine. You're better than me.
If you watch Kai's posing routine, to say it's artistic would be putting it mildly. It's almost like he's dancing on stage. I've seen him come out with masks on, out to not only display his muscles, but he's trying to enter.
What is bodybuilding if it's not presentation and entertainment? Kai entertains, Kai performed.
It was just so different than most of the other routines you had seen. I mean, he just very theatrical.
Kai sat down actually before the show and he draw every move he's gonna do and stuff.
He would wow the audience doing stuff that you've never seen. And actually, he used poses that he did in stripping and used it in bodybuilding.
Long story short, I did my routine, Roddy did his routine, and Kai Green got a check for $10,000. And we won the Best Poser Award. And that best posing routine was the beginning of you'll see a lot of other things happen.
They took that 10 grand. Then he bought the food and he did what he had to do.
He won the money and he still shared the prize money with me. And I will never forget that.
It would just so happen that my path would cross with this guy's path with the bald head and the round muscles. And even then, I didn't understand just how significant a personality and character he was going to become in my life and in my career.
Phil was already climbing up. Phil already had the contracts that people wait 5-10 years for. Phil had it off the bat.
At the time, nobody was even really thinking about Phil Heath. Then all of a sudden, this guy comes to the scene and he's mixing things up pretty fast and pretty quick. So it's almost like maybe some of these pros were like, hey, wait a minute, this kid doesn't belong here yet. But in fact, he did, because his body was, he was that good.
Phil's phenomenal. I mean, he's called the gift for a reason.
You know why he's the gift? Because the guy is just so pretty to look at. He got everything.
When you look at Phil, he's genetically gifted. He had that small waist and wide shoulders. He was totally balanced, between his upper body and his lower body.
Just a prep thing. I do feel that it was more about his size.
Kai was natural at the 2006 Colorado. So strategically, if you got a guy that's natural looking like this, and this guy's pushing his regimen beyond belief, if he gets what you got, he's gonna beat you.
I think that was the last time I was gonna place that low with a show. I was very, very, very clean, worked very hard, and you don't wanna work to be the...
After placing last over and over again, I had to make some tough decisions. I had to do what I had to do. I had to improve. I had to chase that win, whatever it took to get the qualification for the Olympia. Ronnie Coleman and Jay Cutler were ruling the Olympia stage. In order for me to stand close to them, I had to get bigger and more different.
That was required in order to move up in the ranks would be to put on more size. Being pro caliber yet. I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, I maintained a drug-free lifestyle.
I never wanted to take steroids, being unenhanced, at least at that point in my life.
But I wanted to become a really good athlete. I would spend a lot of time in doing whatever I could do to discover more information about that. And I began to seek out the support and wisdom from an old friend that, from what I understood, had a much clearer and diversified understanding of the dark arts.
I had to do what I had to do.
I think he tried to take natural as far as he could, but there comes a point where when to be the greatest of all time, you've got to take some risks. And he began to take his risks, like everyone does. There shouldn't be a stigma attached to it, but because there is, many bodybuilders hold that close to the vest, and they won't talk about it, even though we understand that's a necessary part of taking your body beyond its natural limits. It's what bodybuilding is.
You need to have the regimen on deck. And again, I'm sorry, to crush your dreams or whatever, your regimen is so extreme that 99% of the people watching this have no clue. To be straight up, his career shifted like everyone knew when he started taking something. It was just a matter of time.